The galaxy once feared humanity's might and their massive fleet, but it all vanished in an instant during a brutal war humanity fought in the Outer Rim against a relentless alien species. The centerpiece of their power was the Leviathan, a supercarrier unlike any other, crafted to endure and dominate space combat for centuries. But it disappeared without a trace, and with it humanity's prominence faded. As well, the other species of the Galactic Coalition moved forward with ease, believing humanity lost forever, and the Leviathan only a distant memory. But one historian uncovered a long-lost archive containing fragments of forgotten truth. The message was clear: the Leviathan might still be out there somewhere, hidden away from the galaxy's view. This information was suppressed by the Coalition, but a spark of hope flickered in the historian's mind. What if humanity's ship had survived the war? What if their story was not finished after all? The discovery of the ship's possible survival stirred something deep within the historian's heart. It was a forbidden thought, something considered impossible, but now it was a possibility. The historian shared the findings with a small circle of trusted allies, each one keeping the secret hidden from the ever-watchful eyes of the Coalition. They knew the risks, but they also knew the stakes. The human race had been reduced to whispers and rumors for so long now. They could no longer sit idly by and watch as the galaxy carried on, as if humanity never existed, as if they had no claim to the stars they had once ruled. The galaxy had moved on, with the Coalition governments growing powerful in the vacuum left behind by humanity's disappearance. Species like the Farkali and the Terreni rose to power, their fleets ruling the space lanes, as if they had always been in control. The knowledge of humanity's legacy faded with time until it was almost forgotten, except for the few who still remembered the stories, the legends of humanity's greatness. But those stories were dying too. The Coalition had grown complacent in their belief that humanity was gone and would never return. It was a convenient lie they told themselves, one that allowed them to push forward without fear of a resurgence of human power. They had never understood the true depth of human resolve, the tenacity that had made them such a feared race in the first place. They had no idea what they were about to awaken. The historian's findings were just the beginning of something much larger, something that would send shockwaves through the entire galaxy. As soon as the truth was revealed, the Leviathan was not just a ship, it was a symbol, a beacon of what humanity was capable of. And if it still existed out there somewhere, then everything the Coalition had built could be brought to its knees. The historian kept digging, uncovering more pieces of the puzzle, until finally he uncovered the coordinates, the location where the ship was last recorded to be. The discovery was too important to keep secret any longer, but telling the galaxy meant starting a war, or worse, forcing humanity into a position where they had to prove they were still worthy of their place in the stars. The signal came at the most unexpected time, when the galaxy had all but forgotten humanity's place among the stars. The faintest trace of life after centuries of silence. A deep space monitoring station in the Coalition sector picked up a strange and cryptic transmission, an encrypted distress signal hidden beneath layers of static. The signal was weak, but the codes were unmistakable human encryption patterns from a time long past. The words Leviathan and human flickered on the screens of the technicians working around the clock to decode the message. Their hearts raced as they pieced together the fragments of the signal. It was unmistakable. The message was coming from somewhere deep within uncharted space, a place where no Coalition vessel had ever dared to venture. The revelation spread like wildfire across the Coalition military command. Once the implications were understood, they quickly mobilized their fleet, sending it toward the coordinates embedded in the signal. The mission was clear: retrieve the source of the transmission at all costs. But none of them realized they weren't the only ones interested in the signal. The remnants of humanity scattered throughout the galaxy had never truly disappeared, hidden in the shadows. They had waited for this moment for centuries. The signal was their beacon, their chance to reclaim what was once lost. In a distant corner of space, a small human crew who had intercepted the signal began making their own preparations for the journey. Their ship was older and slower than the Coalition's warships, but it was outfitted with technology few other species knew existed. The crew had been waiting for a sign, waiting for proof that their people had not been completely wiped from the galactic stage. Now that proof had arrived, and they would not let the Coalition take it from them. Their leader, a battle-hardened commander, who had once served aboard the Leviathan, knew this mission would be dangerous, but he was willing to risk everything to find his ship and his people. The human crew set course for the coordinates, while the Coalition fleet did the same, though neither knew the other was on their way. The race had begun, and the stakes were high for both sides. The human crew felt a sense of urgency that the Coalition did not. They knew that if the Coalition got to the Leviathan first, it could mean the end of their struggle for survival. The ship was humanity's last hope, a symbol of their strength, and the key to their resurgence. The Coalition had long believed humanity was finished, but now they were about to discover just how wrong they had been. As both fleets made their way toward the unknown region of space, the true nature of the mission became clear. Neither side would back down. The Coalition was determined to claim the ship and the technology it held, while humanity's forces would stop at nothing to ensure their birthright was not taken from them. The journey was treacherous and filled with obstacles. The deep space sector was filled with strange gravitational anomalies and remnants of ancient alien technology that had never been fully understood, but it was also the perfect place for something as important as the Leviathan to remain hidden away, waiting for the day when humanity would return to reclaim it. Both sides knew that the final outcome would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever, and the tension grew as they closed in on the coordinates where the signal had originated. The space ahead was dark and foreboding as both the Coalition and humanity's forces raced toward the coordinates of the mysterious signal. The Coalition fleet, led by a senior admiral, was massive, its ships dwarfing anything humanity had ever assembled in the past. But despite the size and strength of their fleet, there was an eerie quiet amongst them. None of them truly understood what they were about to face, but they knew it was significant, and they were determined to reach the destination first. Their mission was not just to retrieve the Leviathan, it was to secure its technology and prevent any other faction from having access to its power. Meanwhile, aboard the small human ship, their crew faced a different kind of pressure. While they were outnumbered and outgunned, their determination to find the Leviathan drove them forward. They were a team of survivors, the last of humanity's military elite, each of them skilled in ways that no Coalition officer could comprehend. The commander of the crew, Captain Hayes, had once served aboard the Leviathan during the final days of humanity's war, and he knew the ship better than anyone. He was no stranger to the dangers of deep space and the unpredictable anomalies that lay in wait out there. But he also knew this mission was their last chance. Their people had been forgotten for too long, and they couldn't allow the Leviathan to fall into the hands of the Coalition. Both fleets ventured into the unknown sector with caution, but the deeper they traveled, the more intense the anomalies became. The space seemed alive as gravitational distortions twisted light and pulled at their ships. The Coalition fleet was forced to make evasive maneuvers to avoid the strange effects of the region, while the human ship moved more carefully, weaving through the hazards with expert precision. They had been trained to deal with these exact kinds of challenges, and each obstacle they faced was another testament to humanity's will to survive. The Coalition was the first to arrive at the edge of the sector, but they found themselves halted by the presence of an immense debris field, the remnants of a long-forgotten battle scattered across the void. These were no ordinary wrecks, though some of the ships bore an eerie resemblance to the Leviathan's designs, but they were destroyed in ways that didn't make sense. It was as if the ships had been torn apart by some unseen force, something far beyond the Coalition's understanding. The Admiral ordered a scan, but found nothing of value or importance. Yet the crew felt a growing unease, as if they were being watched. On the human ship, Captain Hayes felt the same unease, but he knew that this was not coincidence. He instructed his crew to proceed with caution, and as they neared the signal's origin, they found themselves on the edge of an even stranger phenomenon. An enormous gravity well pulled at their ship, with an intensity that made their sensors flicker. The crew gasped as the massive shape of the Leviathan emerged from the darkness. It was enormous and silent, floating among the debris field like a giant sleeping beast. The Supercarrier's once majestic hull was scared and battered, but it was unmistakably the Leviathan. Hayes could hardly believe his eyes. The Leviathan was real. It had survived. The ship that had been thought lost forever was right in front of him, and they were the first to find it. But the Coalition fleet was not far behind the race to claim the ship had come to its final stretch, and the stakes were higher than ever before. As the human ship approached the dormant Leviathan, Captain Hayes felt his heart race. The sight of the massive Supercarrier left him speechless for a moment. He had seen the Leviathan in its prime, but now it was a ghost of its former glory, battered and broken. Yet even in its damaged state, it exuded an undeniable presence, something ancient and powerful. He could feel the weight of humanity's history in every inch of the ship, as if it was calling out to him, reminding him of everything they had lost. The crew worked quickly to prepare for boarding. Hayes knew that the Coalition would not be far behind, and they had no time to waste. The ship was too valuable, too dangerous to leave in the wrong hands. As his crew readied themselves, Hayes focused on the mission. The Leviathan was the key to humanity's return, and they had to make sure it was secured before the Coalition could claim it. The human boarding party moved through the wreckage of nearby ships, carefully scanning for any signs of life or hidden dangers. The space around the Leviathan was eerily still, as if the ship itself was waiting for them to make the first move. They docked with the ship's massive hull and carefully entered through one of the breach points that had been left exposed from the ship's long hibernation. Inside the ship was a labyrinth of cold corridors and dimly lit rooms. The interior was eerily quiet, the air stale and thick with the smell of age. The crew navigated the ship with purpose, but they couldn't help but feel the weight of the silence pressing in on them. Every step they took seemed to echo in the stillness, as if the ship itself was waking up after a long slumber. The once proud corridors of the Leviathan now looked like the ruins of a forgotten empire. As they moved deeper into the ship, Hayes ordered the crew to search for the command center. It was there that they would find the ship's core systems, and where they hoped to reactivate the ancient AI that had once controlled the Leviathan. The AI was the key to unlocking the ship's full potential. If it was still functional after years of hibernation, they didn't know if it would still be active, or if they would find nothing but a lifeless shell. They finally reached the command center and found it in a state of disrepair. The screens were dark, the controls unresponsive, but when Hayes ordered a systems reboot, something unexpected happened. A low hum filled the air, and the lights flickered to life. The ship's AI had reawakened. The voice that came through the speakers was soft but unmistakable. Leviathan, the AI, spoke, its voice laden with centuries of silence. Captain Hayes' breath caught in his throat as the ship's systems powered up around them. The once dormant ship began to hum with life again. Its energy shields flickered to life, its weapon systems slowly coming online. It was like watching a sleeping giant stir from its slumber. But there was no time to celebrate. Hayes knew the Coalition was closing in, and they needed to move quickly. He ordered the crew to begin securing the ship and preparing for the inevitable conflict. They had found the Leviathan, but now they had to defend it with everything they had. The hum of the Leviathan's awakening was like a battle drum signaling the return of humanity's might. Captain Hayes stood frozen in the command center as the ship slowly came back to life. The air crackled with energy as the AI systems powered on the ship's colossal engines began to rumble deep within the hull. The lights flickered as ancient technologies that had been dormant for centuries began to stir. The ship was alive once again. But that awakening came at a cost. The Coalition fleet was already moving toward the coordinates. The immense fleet was only moments away. The moment they learned the Leviathan was active, there would be no negotiations, no offers of peace. They would come in full force to claim the ship for themselves. Hayes knew this. They were not just fighting for a relic of the past. They were fighting for the future of humanity itself. He had to make sure that they could defend the Leviathan until humanity could rebuild its place in the stars. The human crew scrambled to prepare the ship for combat. Hayes barked orders to his crew as they moved swiftly through the corridors, securing key systems and prepping the weapons. They had to be ready, and they had to be ready fast. The Coalition's fleet was vast, but the Leviathan was far more powerful than any other ship in the galaxy. It had been designed for an era where warfare was at its most brutal, and its weapon systems reflected that. Outside in space, the Coalition ships were already positioning themselves. They knew that the Leviathan's power could change the course of the galaxy forever. The admiral in charge of the Coalition fleet issued his orders. The time for diplomacy had passed. The human vessel had to be destroyed or captured at all costs. Captain Hayes stood at the helm of the Leviathan. As the ship slowly began to move, he could feel the ancient power of the ship flowing through its systems. He was once a part of it, and now he was once again commanding it. The ship seemed to recognize him, as if it was an old friend awakening from a long sleep, ready to take up its mantle of war. The Leviathan turned its weapons to face the incoming Coalition fleet. As it powered up its weapon systems, Hayes could see the Coalition ships moving into attack formation. They were getting closer and closer by the second, and soon they would be in range. Hayes could hear the sound of his crew preparing for battle below deck. He knew this was their last chance. The fight for humanity's survival had begun. The first volley came from the Coalition flagship, a massive energy blast streaking across space toward the Leviathan. It hit the Supercarrier's shields with a thunderous impact, but the shields held strong. The Leviathan had been built to endure. It returned fire with its own weapons, unleashing a barrage of missiles and energy blasts that ripped through the first few Coalition ships like paper. The power of the Leviathan was unmatched. Its weapon systems were so advanced they could obliterate entire fleets in seconds, and the Coalition had no idea what they were up against. But the fight was only just beginning. The Coalition fleet regrouped and began retaliating with everything they had. They knew that if they didn't take down the Leviathan now, the entire galaxy could be thrown into chaos. But they had underestimated humanity, and they had underestimated the power of the Leviathan. The battle raged in the dark expanse of space as the Leviathan fought back against the Coalition fleet. Waves of energy blasts and missiles collided with the ship's massive hull, but the Supercarrier's shields absorbed the hits with ease. The crew of the Leviathan worked in unison as they activated the ship's offensive systems. They had prepared for this moment, and now the time had come to unleash the full might of humanity's greatest warship. Captain Hayes stood at the helm, his eyes locked on the view screen. As explosions lit up the cold black void, the Coalition ships were powerful, but none of them had ever faced a vessel like the Leviathan. The ship's weapons were ancient yet refined, and they tore through the enemy lines with terrifying precision. A series of rapid fire lasers blasted through the Coalition vessels, causing them to break apart in a shower of debris. Some of their ships exploded violently, while others were crippled and sent spiraling into the void. The Coalition admiral watched from his flagship, his face a mask of frustration. He had known the risks of this mission, but he had never expected such overwhelming resistance. The Leviathan was not just a ship, it was a fortress, a weapon of unimaginable destruction. The admiral ordered his fleet to fall back and regroup, but it was already too late. The human crew had taken full control of their ship, and they were relentless. The Coalition ships were disoriented by the ferocity of the attack and the superior firepower of the Leviathan. It was only a matter of time before they were completely overwhelmed. Hayes barked orders as he guided the ship through the chaos. The human crew responded with precision, activating the ship's advanced systems to maximize its efficiency. The ship's weapon systems powered up again as the Leviathan prepared for another devastating assault. The human fleet's tactics were simple yet effective. They used the ship's advanced AI to coordinate every move. Each attack was calculated and executed with surgical precision. In the heat of the battle, the human crew began to turn the tide of the war. The once formidable Coalition fleet was now in retreat as the Leviathan pushed forward with an unstoppable force. Hayes could feel the tide of history shifting as the enemy ships were overwhelmed. One by one, the Coalition ships began to break apart. Some tried to flee, others fought to the bitter end. but none could stand against the Leviathan's might. The human crew cheered as their ship tore through the enemy lines with renewed vigor. The Leviathan had not only survived, but had proven itself to be a weapon of incredible power. It was no longer just a relic of humanity's past. It was their future, and it was reclaiming the stars that had once belonged to them. But Hayes knew that this battle was far from over. The Coalition would not accept defeat so easily. The galaxy was watching, and the fight for humanity's place in the stars was just beginning. He knew that even with the strength of the Leviathan on their side, there would be more battles to fight, more enemies to face. But for now, humanity had won its first victory. The return of the Leviathan had proven that humanity was not finished, and that their time had come once again. The retreat of the Coalition fleet had been swift and decisive, but it was not without its cost. The damage to their forces was severe, and their morale was shattered. Their flagship was now little more than a crippled hulk drifting in the wake of the Leviathan's onslaught. But the Coalition was not about to surrender so easily. The Admiral had seen the power of humanity's weapon, and he knew that if they did not act fast, the Leviathan would be unstoppable. In the heart of Coalition command, a plan was hatched. It was risky and desperate, but they had no other choice. They would gather what remained of their fleet and make one final push to neutralize the Leviathan before humanity could fully recover and reclaim their lost dominion. The Admiral sent out a call for reinforcements from the other sectors, hoping that their last chance for victory lay in a united assault. Across the galaxy, the remnants of the Coalition fleets began to converge at a central point, their final rallying cry echoing through the comm systems. The Admiral ordered them to regroup and prepare for a last-ditch battle to reclaim the power they had lost. Humanity's brief reign was about to come to a bloody end in their eyes, but they underestimated the resolve of their opponents. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge of the Leviathan. As the ship continued its journey through the stars, he had won a battle, but he knew that the true test was yet to come. The Coalition had retreated, but they were regrouping, and they would be back. The question was how far they were willing to go to ensure humanity's destruction. The Supercarrier had survived for a reason, and that reason was not just to protect humanity's past, but to pave the way for its future. As the Leviathan sailed into open space, Hayes felt the weight of responsibility settle upon him. The ship's systems hummed with power. The crew had been given a second chance to defend their homeworld, to restore what had been taken from them. But with the Coalition's new strategy coming into play, the Leviathan would need every ounce of its power and humanity's unwavering determination to survive. The calm before the storm was palpable. The crew moved quietly, but efficiently, preparing for the inevitable onslaught. They could feel the tension building, the uncertainty of what was to come pressing down on them. But there was one thing Hayes knew for sure. The Leviathan was humanity's symbol, their lifeline, their reason to stand tall once more. In the distance, the first signs of the Coalition's new forces emerged on the scanners. A fleet far larger than anything humanity had seen before slowly took shape. Their ships were bristling with weapons designed for this one purpose: to destroy the Leviathan, and with it humanity's hope of reclaiming its place among the stars. The massive fleet advanced like a shadow, swallowing the light in its path. But Hayes stood firm. He was not about to let humanity's legacy be erased again. They would fight until the end. The Leviathan's weapon systems powered up once more. The crew was ready for whatever the Coalition threw at them. It was not just a battle for a ship, it was a battle for survival, and humanity was prepared to make its stand. The final confrontation was upon them. The tension in space was palpable as both sides readied for their last battle. The massive Coalition fleet advanced like a storm cloud on the horizon, its ships bristling with weapons designed for one thing only: to crush humanity's last hope. The Leviathan stood ready, its systems fully powered up, and its crew poised for the fight of their lives. Captain Hayes stood at the helm, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. But his resolve was stronger than ever. He had seen the suffering of his people, the destruction of their home, and the loss of their place in the stars. He would not let that be their legacy. The first strike came from the Coalition fleet. A barrage of energy blasts and missiles rained down on the Leviathan. The Supercarrier shields absorbed the initial assault, but the power of the Coalition's firepower was immense. The Leviathan shuddered from the force of the blows, but Hayes knew it was just the beginning. He had to keep his cool and command his crew through the storm. The human crew responded with precision. They activated the Supercarrier's weapon systems and returned fire in full force. A wave of energy blasts and missiles shot toward the Coalition fleet, tearing through enemy ships with devastating power. The Leviathan's weapons were unmatched in their ferocity, and the Coalition ships began to break apart as they were hit with deadly accuracy. But the Coalition was not ready to surrender yet. Their fleet pressed forward undeterred by the destruction around them. In the heart of the Coalition fleet, the Admiral issued orders to his forces, desperate to gain the upper hand. He knew that they could not afford to lose this battle. It was their last chance to erase humanity from the stars. But the Leviathan was more than just a ship now. It had become a symbol of humanity's strength and defiance against impossible odds. The Coalition could feel it. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. As the battle raged on, the Leviathan moved with deadly precision, each of its weapons a force of nature tearing through the Coalition's ranks. The human crew's tactics were flawless. Their advanced AI systems coordinated every move, every shot. As they overwhelmed the enemy forces, the Coalition was buckling under the sheer power of the Leviathan, and their once proud fleet began to disintegrate one ship at a time. In the chaos of the battle, the Admiral realized that victory was slipping through his fingers. He had thought that the Coalition was invincible, but now it seemed as if the Leviathan was unbeatable. He ordered a final retreat, but it was too late. The remaining Coalition ships turned and fled in every direction, as the Leviathan's weapons continued to tear through their hulls with ruthless efficiency. The once mighty fleet was no more scattered and broken. The battle was over, and humanity had won. The Leviathan had proven its worth and had reclaimed its place in the stars. The crew of the Supercarrier stood together in silence as the remnants of the Coalition fleet disappeared into the distance. The victory was theirs, but it was just the beginning of a new era for humanity. Captain Hayes looked out into the vast expanse of space. As the Leviathan sailed through the void, they had survived. They had proven that humanity was not finished, that they could rise again and reclaim their rightful place among the stars. The Leviathan was not just a ship, it was a symbol of rebirth, of hope, and the future of a people who had refused to be forgotten. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same again.